Hi everyone, it's Pete here. Now you may know that I'm a fan of the Arrma 3S range and people are always asking me which one is the best one. Well, I've got my own personal favourite, but it does depend on the sort of driving you like to do and the type of ground you're running on. I've currently got the Granite, the Senton, the Big Rock and the Typhon. I haven't bought the Vortex yet, but I have got some opinions about it which I'll talk about. I'm not going to cover the Vendetta because road cars are not really my thing, but it does look pretty good if that's what you're into. I have done a fair few maintenance videos on this range, so check those out if you're interested. So in no particular order, I'm going to start with the Big Rock. Now there's two chassis lengths in this range. The Big Rock uses the longest chassis. This has got truck tyres which are a bit narrower than the ones on the Granite. We're going to look at first in a general off-roady location in the forests, and this is where the Big Rock's really at home. The truck tyres work well here, and the longer wheelbase means that it can climb slopes with no problem. Moving on to this fairly challenging rocky area, it does really well here. This is also good for doing jumps, and it's nice and controllable in the air. It's not as easy to backflip as the shorter wheelbase Granite, but it does jump well. Where this isn't quite so good is hooning around on a big area of grass. It is nice and quick, but it does sort of tend to fall over its own tyres a little bit. If you put the slightly wider Granite tyres on, it does work a little bit better in the corners. What I've done with all of these is to put thicker shock oiling because I think the shocks are too soft out of the box. So I'd say the Big Rock is a good all-rounder, but maybe not so good around a track. Next up is the Typhon, which is a buggy and also uses the longer chassis. It's got buggy tyres which are low profile and quite firm. This one's got 17mm hexes, which is standard for an 8 scale buggy, but it's different to the other 3S cars which got 14mm hexes. This is surprisingly off-roady for a buggy because it's got loads of ground clearance and plenty of suspension travel. Also, this did really well at the orange rocks, which you wouldn't expect from a buggy. Really, it's a bit more like a truck in disguise. Where this is really good is for doing jumps because it seems to be really aerodynamic and goes a long way. So this one's not easy to backflip like the shorter wheelbase Granite, but I expect you could do if you tried hard enough. Now, this is good for hooning around on the big grass area, but the way it's set up out of the box, the suspension's a bit too soft and the ground clearance is quite high, so it can fall over a bit more than you'd expect from a buggy. So if this is the type of driving you like to do, it'd be good to lower the suspension a bit and make it firmer so it's better in the corners. Also, I was finding that if the ground was wet, it was spinning out a bit too easily, so I bought some Proline wheels and Badland tyres, which are much better off-road than the stock tyres. Another change I've done to this is to replace the tiny buggy bumper with one from a Senton, so it's got a bit more protection at the front. So the good thing about this range is you can swap parts between the different cars quite easily to make hybrid versions. So this is another good all-rounder and a bit more off-roady than you might expect. Moving on to the Senton, which is a short course truck and uses the longer chassis. So this has got short course wheels and tyres which look like truck tyres from the outside, but when you have a look from the inside you can see they're actually quite low profile and firm. So in general off-roady areas it does do pretty well, but not as well as the other ones that have got the bigger wheels, and added to that you've got the main problem, which is the way the body goes over the wheels and directs the dirt inside the chassis, which is a bit of a pain. So to that end I have added the scorched parts inner fender sets, and this does help a bit with the problem but doesn't sort it out altogether, so maybe some kind of chassis cover would be good. Over at the orange rocks this was pretty hopeless, to be honest, with the smaller wheels, and it was easily the worst of the bunch. Now onto the jumps. Now this is okay at smaller jumps, but if you try and do bigger jumps then the air tends to get under the body and makes it difficult to control. The inner fenders do help a little bit to stop the body acting like a parachute. You could also put some holes in the body which should help. So on the big grass here, the main problem with the Senton with the stock setup is it's too easy to roll over with the soft suspension that's got a lot of travel. Also this one's narrower than the other cars, which doesn't help. So it's not looking good for the Senton really, is it? Well, what I've done with my Senton is to shorten the shock length and use thicker shock oil. It's transformed this into the best 3S car for hooning around on the grass. Now it tends to slide around the corners rather than falling over. I haven't tried this on a track, but I'd imagine it'd be great fun to have a few of these racing together. So I do really enjoy driving this one now, and it just shows you can modify these cars if they aren't quite what you want out of the box. Next up is the Granite, which is a truck that uses the shorter chassis. This has got big wide squashy truck tyres which are quite soft. Now the Granite's very much at home in the general off-roady areas, as you might expect. Being a shorter wheelbase, this thing's a bit mad and does a lot of wheelies, which I really enjoy. It was excellent at the big orange rocks and made it up there okay despite the short wheelbase. Now jumps is where this thing's really good fun. With big tyres and short wheelbase, it's really controllable in the air and it's easy to do backflips. On the big grassy area, this is good fun but slightly unstable due to the big tyres that balloon at speed. I did try doing speed runs with this, but the soft tyres do make it a challenge to keep this in a straight line at speed. So all in all, the Granite is my favourite, and if I was only allowed to have one of these, it would be this one. Now onto the Vortex, which I did research a lot but didn't end up buying. So for that reason I haven't got my own footage of it, but Phil at Tomley RC has kindly allowed me to use the footage that he took of his Vortex. So this is a stadium truck and it's on the shorter chassis like the Granite. It's got similar wheels to the Granite with much firmer lower profile tyres. Also what's different to the other cars in this range is that it's got shorter shock towers and shocks. So this one comes with slightly upgraded electronics compared with the other cars, and it's more expensive. And it's a shame they didn't stick with the same electronics as the other cars and make the price the same, because I don't think the upgrade is worthwhile. Now I can't show this in the same areas as the others, but I noticed with less suspension travel it doesn't seem to land jumps as well as the Granite, for instance. Phil took this to the skate park and it did seem to backflip easily like the Granite. I noticed it was landing with a bit of a thud, so you might need to firm up the suspension so the chassis doesn't hit the ground quite so easily. So I think the hard tyres and lower suspension make this a bit more suited to on-road and speed runs where it seems to be really stable. So all in all, I might have bought this one instead of the Senton if I didn't already have it, because it looks good for generally hooning around on the big grassy area, and also it doesn't have the associated problems with the big Senton body shell letting the dirt in and acting like a parachute. Okay, so those are my thoughts on these. If you've got more than one of these Arrma 3S cars, then which one is your favourite? Please comment below and press like if you like. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.